Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Abby Milner, and tonight I have the privilege of sharing God's calling in my life with you. My journey goes back to day one because I was blessed to be born into the Salvation Army to my amazing parents, Majors Andy and Amy Kelly. As a kid, I grew up extremely involved in the Corps with activities. I was an honor junior soldier, a Sunbeam, a General's Guard, and a Corps Cadet. I was also in the band from a very young age, and I was a timberlist. So you can say I was the stereotypical officer's kid. At the age of 14, I decided to fully devote my life to the Lord, and I became a senior soldier. I was so excited about this because I truly love the Lord, and I truly love the Salvation Army. Right after I was enrolled as a senior soldier, my parents received moving orders to go to Oklahoma City. And even though I was used to moving around, this one was a little bit harder for me because I was not ready to leave the Corps that I was in. But God had bigger and better plans, not only for my parents, but for me as well. I started high school that year in Oklahoma, and very quickly I fell madly in love with the city and the people and my Corps, and of course, the Oklahoma Sooners. I was doing really well in high school. I was in the marching band, and that helped me to make a lot of friends very quickly. I also became very involved with my new Corps, and I found lifelong friends in my Corps Cadet Brigade there in Oklahoma. I worked at camp every summer, and I really felt God's hand in everything that I did. Well, my senior year of high school changed everything for me. I found a new group of friends, and as a teenager, I wanted to be in the in crowd. So little by little, I started to change, and I started doing things that no one really associated me with. After I graduated high school, my parents received their next moving orders to come to Orlando, but I insisted that I was going to stay in Oklahoma. I was 18, and I thought that I had everything together and that I could make my own decisions, even if my parents did not agree with me. This was another personality trait that was not associated with me because I truly love and respect my family, but in that time of my life, I didn't show them the respect that they deserved. I found this amazing university that I was so excited about, so I applied and I was accepted into the sports medicine program at Southern Nazarene University. I was over the moon because I found a community of Christian people that I would live around, and more importantly, or so I thought, a way for me to stay in Oklahoma. Well, it was wonderful that it was a Christian school, but I was not living a Christian life. All the while I was there, I was still participating in worldly things, mind-altering things, and my parents had no idea. After being there for around 5 months, I decided that I couldn't keep my habit up and stay there, so I dropped out, and I moved in with a friend of mine. The worldly living continued and got even worse from that point on. When I thought that things could not get any worse, I got word from my parents that my grandmother, who I loved dearly, had suddenly passed away. No one was there with her because my entire family, except for me, were welcoming my brother home from his tour in Iraq that very same day. So the guilt set in that I was not only there for her, but I wasn't there for my brother to welcome him home. So I quickly booked a flight to Georgia, and I went home for her funeral. My brother asked if I would like to stay with him and his family for a couple of weeks, so I did that. But the night that I got back to Oklahoma, my friend had asked me to leave. So I became homeless with nowhere to go, but I didn't tell my parents that. My then boyfriend's mom told me that she would take me in, so I moved in with them, and I ended up living there for over a year. I still refused to live with my parents because I was grown, and I wanted to make my own life. So for a year, I was living there. I was living my life for the world. I was ignoring my family, ignoring what God was trying to say to me. I became dependent on mind-altering substances, and I used them to cover the harsh reality all around me. I was in an emotionally and sometimes physically abusive relationship, and I had nowhere to go, so I had to deal with it. So I did what I could to numb the situation. After a year, my sister finally got a hold of me, and she told me that she was coming to get me. I was so reluctant to that because I still wanted to prove myself, but I was so broken inside that I agreed and I told her to come. So she got on a plane, she got me, and then she flew me home to Orlando. I had been so far gone that my family didn't even recognize me when I got here. But watch how God works. The same night that I flew to Orlando, my parents were hosting a young adult dinner, and there I met this really sweet, good-looking British guy. He was a Salvationist from England, and he was visiting the area for a few weeks looking for a job to work at the parks. But for the next couple of weeks, he and I got to know each other. We hung out a little bit, and we just became really good friends very quickly. So I knew by just meeting him that God had a plan. I knew in my heart that God was telling me to get my act together and change the path that I was on. It was not an overnight change, but having James as a friend really helped me to see that I was worth much more than what I thought, and that God had incredible things in store for me. I finally decided to make Orlando my home, and I began to get involved with the Corps again. I got back into school, and I got my degree in Christian ministries. I also got a job at the Orlando ARC, and I found myself submerged in ministry every single day for 7 years. My life went from having my back turned to God to then being completely surrounded by Him and His calling for my life. In this time, I also had the privilege to go on 4 different Salvationist Service Corps trips, and each and every one molded me into who I am today, even more. I found that I have a love, a passion, and a calling for people. I would not only do ministry at the ARC, but I also went out every Saturday to do urban ministry in very broken communities in Orlando, places that reminded me of who I used to be, and it opened my eyes to how much God had helped me to become who I am today. I realized that the old person was gone, and through Him, I was a new creation. God then led James and I to be the Corps Cadet counselors in Orlando, and we have been doing that for the past 5 years. This has been one of my absolute favorite ministries to be a part of. We have the most incredible young people in Orlando, and they have made such a huge impact on my calling as well. Fast forwarding to now, James and I are married, and we have 2 beautiful boys, and we are on our way to start our journey together, answering God's call to be Salvation Army officers. As much as I tried to say as a young person that I would never be an officer, deep down I knew that God had this planned all along. I have fully surrendered my life and my will to God's will for me, and He has given me the perfect person to do it with and to follow His calling with. I can't count the ways God has blessed me since I turned from my past and look forward to His plan for my life. There are way too many to count. I'm not proud of choices that I made in the past, but I know that God is using each and every situation and experience that I have been through to mold me into the person He wants me to be. I can say with all confidence that I am called to be in God's army, and I am called to be a Salvation Army officer. Thank you, and God bless.